Before we get into our next segment of lessons, which has to do with the exposing of the illusion of self, I'd like to just do a PS on our teaching on anger. This comes from a sutta called Imperfections. And it's all a part of the stanza is also found in the Dhammapada, chapter 1. But it's a reminder, it's a very simple and concise reminder about why we should eliminate from our hearts and minds all thoughts of hatred toward anything and everybody. So let's see, where do I want to pick up? Well, I'll just start at the beginning and stop when I think it's the place to stop. He was at this temple with a bunch of monastics, and they were quarreling, having internal dispute and disruption. And he tried to get them to reconcile. And they told him no, they didn't want to, and they would handle this. So when he left, he recited a poem or a stanza, and he said, "When many voices shout at once, none considers himself a fool. Though the Sangha is being split, none thinks himself to be at fault." Now we could exchange Sangha for community or country or state. It says, "They have forgotten thoughtful speech. They talk obsessed by words alone. Uncurbed their mouths, they bawl at will. None knows what leads him to act." And this is the part that's germane to the whole poem. "He abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. And those who harbor thoughts like these, hatred will never be allayed." It's not saying that these things never happen to you and you shouldn't think about them because they never happened to you. He said, when they happen to you, if you keep them in the forefront of your mind, your hatred, your anger will never be allayed. You'll never be able to put it down. "He abused me, he struck me, he defeated me, he robbed me. And those who do not harbor thoughts like these, hatred will readily be allayed." You think about hating things, people hating you, you hating other people, it'll just keep going on. But if you don't, hatred will be readily allayed. For in this world, hatred is never allayed by further acts of hate. It is allayed by non-hate. This is the fixed and ageless law. So no matter whether you think that it's the other guy is deserving of revenge or deserving of you thinking them a bad person, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Hatred is never allayed by further acts of hate. It is allayed by non-hatred. This is a fixed and ageless law. So now do with it what you will. It's a law. If you want it to work, you've got to be law-abiding. So we talked about beginning to work with the concept of self-identity. And there are many exercises in the suttas that help us to detach ourselves from our stuckness to ourselves, our belief that we are an individual separated and apart from all other individuals. And this information comes from the greater discourse on the advice to Rahula. Rahula was Buddha's son. And when it was evening, Rahula approached the Blessed One and said, "Venerable Sir, how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit?" And I'm just going to read to you let's see what I'll read to you. Okay. Rahula, whatever internally belongs to oneself is solid, solidified, and clung to. So that is head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidney, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, large intestines, small intestines, contents of the stomach, feces, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified, and clung to. This is called the internal earth element. Now both the internal earth element and the external earth element is simply earth element. And that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Whenever one sees thus as it is actually with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and takes the mind and makes the mind dispassionate towards the earth element. So it's informing us that our form, and this is just taking form right now because we've got 5 aggregates to deal with that people feel because they have these aggregates, they must be self or individuals. And we're going to take one aggregate at a time. But it says that this internal earth element and the external earth element are just earth element. That we never say when we look at a tree or look at a rock or look at the earth that that's me. Right? We never say that. We say, well, that's the earth, that's a rock, that's a tree, that's a bird. So it's making us question our identity and who we think we are. And it says, if you don't say this about rocks and trees and buildings and things that are hard and firm, and that the external earth element and the internal earth element, which is teeth, nails, hair, organs, are the same. They're just earth element. They're just element. They're just the element of the earth. That's all they are. They're not you. They're not anything else. They're not body. They're just earth element. And it goes on to say, to teach on this for the other 4 . No. This part just teaches on the body itself and the elements that are existing within the body. So, the exercise is to ask yourself, what is your resistance to letting go of an identification that's erroneous, that is causing you to live in a world of delusion And as long as you see things the way you see things, you will always suffer. Because remember, although fundamentally suffering is created when there's craving and clinging, but more basic than that, in order for there to be craving and clinging, there has to be a self. And if you have, through your own processes, through your own meditation, seen for yourself as it actually is, that there's just elements, that there's no self, that as you take this body apart with your inspection, your observation, and you look inside and you look outside, and no matter whether you're inside or outside, you don't see you. You see elements, but you don't see you. So obviously, the reality is that there's some subject that sees the objects. But the things that we are trying to objectify into a self, into a person, into an entity, is just objects of elements. That they're not even what we think they are. We talk about building, a house, a car. But these are conceptions. And when we actually look at this thing that we've made into this thing, we can find tires and steering wheels and engines and seat covers and all of that and floor mats, but we can't find a car. And it's the same thing with this concept of self. We can chop up ourselves with investigation. We can make a decision to look inside the body from above the top of the head to below the bottom of the feet to see whether we can locate ourselves. And you can, for many reasons. Because first of all, it's not there. That's the first reason. It doesn't exist in the aggregate of form. Now, as I said to you on Sunday, that there's a sutta that says, what is not yours, abandon it. And once you abandon it, you will be happy for a long time. So it's telling us that when we abandon the illusion of form or feeling or self or perception or consciousness being us, we will then, by processes of elimination, we'll begin to understand who we truly are. The middle way is not about eternalism and it's not about annihilism. It's somewhere between those two things. But only when you eliminate the false can you see the true. So the first work is to make a decision whether you want to hold on to this identity of self and all of the problems that it brings, or whether you want to find your true self. And for the first time discover who you really are. And that's entirely up to you. This work, this whole concept of non-self and self is undoubtedly other than karma, the most difficult thing for you to understand and work with. Because you've got to be willing to let go of everything you thought you were. And for most of us, this idea is frightening because we've spent most of our lives establishing an identity, becoming someone. We've gone to school, we've made friends, we've moved uptown, bought a new car, so that we can be seen as who we think we are. And then all of a sudden someone is saying, okay, well, you got to just drop all of that. It's not you. And you might be enjoying your journey. But again, just remember that that's why you suffer. Because there's this integrated self that you feel is present. On Thursday, we will begin to do meditations on experiencing the quality of the internal elements, so that you can see for yourself. It's very difficult to say, well, you're made of the earth element, and you're made of the water element, and you're made of the air element. And this is what an air element is. It's the air in the body, the winds that blow up and down, or the water element is the cohesion of the body and the blood, or the fire element is the digestion. It's easy to say that, but it's hard to identify with it, because that's not how you're used to looking at yourself. So the first thing is to be able to go inside and find the qualities of the elements that you're talking about and experiencing those. And then you begin to realize that, yeah, gee, that is all I am. But it also puts you in good company. It puts you in a collective with everything else in the whole galaxy. We hear these poems and stories about being stardust, but that's all we all are. It's just something very, very precious. Not these crazy people we see running around the street. Okay. Let's see if we can get into something right quick. In my opinion, the easiest element to discover the quality of and be present with is air. Because we work a lot with air, we work a lot with breath. So we're familiar with breath. We're not as familiar, in my opinion, with earth or hardness or firmness. Because we can feel firmness in a chair or cushion, but we can't feel it in our buttocks. We can't feel the firmness in us. Although we are told that, bone and organs are all earth element, but until we develop the sensitivity to go inside and actually be able to touch bone with consciousness, we are not able to actually discover the firmness of the element as present inside the body. But air, pretty easy. So, if there are no questions, let's go inside for a few minutes and just do an exercise with air. Sure.
We're not supposed, I'm just confused about this. Oh, thank you. I'm just confused about this.
So are a lot of people. They're just not asking the question.
So, if we're if we're just made up of bones and whatever, heart and all that kind of stuff, and we're all the same, but yet we all somehow look different. Everyone's created just a little bit differently, and our fingerprints are all different. So I guess that's my question. Like, I'm confused about that, because then how can we just be like, were we made to be individuals, or were we, like all one with all our hearts look the same, our bone, we're all, I think internally we must be the same too, to a certain degree, although we can't see it, but we must be a little different.
Identity is the one thing that's, again, I said, is very difficult to let go of. Because you've been told since you were born that you're different and special, and you're our baby girl, and you're cute.
I'm just talking about like physical appearance, this, yeah.
I'm telling you how you got it, right?
I got it.
It didn't happen by magic. It didn't happen by discovery. It happened because someone laid a perception on you.
Gotcha.
And we, from getting our names, to getting our bedroom, to getting our bed, to getting our toy, we've been convinced that we're someone separate from. And yeah, I do agree with you that there seems to be a separate identity or a difference in things like DNA and the lenses of the eye, but there's also differences in body odor. But that doesn't mean we're different. That just means we have different characteristics. This doesn't, all of the study that I've done doesn't hold court or conversation about why we have different DNA or why we have different fingerprints. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything according to the teaching, because it tells us that our similarity is more important to identify and understand than our difference, because our difference is what pulls us into that idea of subject and person, and that the important thing is about becoming disenfranchised with that, so that we can see our samenesses. And we express it often. I mean, we laud it, we applaud it, we talk about us being, of one earth and one tribe, and we're all one. But we say that, but we don't see that. We don't really understand what that means. Because there is something inherently inside of us that makes us believe that I'm me, and because I'm looking out at you, that you are separate than me. Now, you come to Qigong class, so you have had experiences where you've been able to not only feel your own energy, but have you felt others yet? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's that connection and sameness on a whole nother level of existence that has nothing to do with you and me. Mm-hmm. It has to do with us. And pretty soon it doesn't have to do with us, because we can't find us in that mix. We can find energy, but we can't find us. We can't find two people dancing around in a chi bubble, right? But we can find the chi bubble, and we can identify it as something that is mine and also something that is theirs. So I think that the more you are able to let go of your false identity, the more you will be able to see who you really are. And the Buddha, interestingly enough, never talked about who you really are. He just talked about who you're not. And he inferred in his teachings that if you search for who you are without letting go of who you're not, then you'll never find who you are. Okay? Hard to do. So he says, here's the steps, here's the way, here's the method to find yourself. Let go of who you're not. And what you will come away with, what will be left, is who you are. And one day, when you are free from that false identity, that misidentity, you will be in wonder because you will finally see who you really are. It's just not who we think. Okay? All right. So, internal air element and external air element is just air element. They're both the same, no difference. So this means that when I breathe in and out, whether it's inside or whether it's outside, it's just air. Right? But we know that there is this element that is a part of my construction, just like wood or earth and air and fire and water and space. They're all a part of this construction, but they're all a part of all construction. Everything is elemental, okay, including us. Okay? So I want you to breathe in and out through your nose and become aware of the pressure that you feel in the top of your head as you inhale. Just be aware of the pressure that you feel as you breathe in and out through the nose, inside your skull, at the top of your head. Now this has been happening all the time, but you don't pay much attention to it once it gets past the nose. As a matter of fact, you don't pay much attention to it even when it doesn't get past the nose, unless your nose is stopped up. And then you're concerned, and then you're worried, and then you want to spray something up there to get it open so you can get that air back up. But usually you don't care. As long as it's moving in and out, that's fine. You don't see any identity with it. You don't see any purpose for it. You just know that if you stop breathing, you'll feel lousy. But now, what I'm asking you to do is look for the quality of the air. That quality, that pushing, that's a quality that air does, pushing. You see air pushing the trees, and you see air pushing objects along the ground, a piece of trash. You see air pushing us when it's really cold and we want to hurry up and get inside. Pushing. So just close your eyes and breathe. And feel the quality of the element as it pushes against the top of the head. All right, did everyone feel that pushing at the top of the head? Did anyone not feel that pushing at the top of the head? All right, now, what you're going to discover with this exercise is that presence is everywhere. Okay, so right now we've lived so insensitive that the only place we felt it was at the tip of the nose, maybe at the lip. You know, maybe we felt the belly as it went in and out, but we didn't really feel the quality of air. But now, for the first time, maybe, or second time, or third time, you felt it moving on the inside at the top of the head. So now what you want to do is feel it as it moves into the neck. See if you can feel it as it moves. Try to find the places that it's easiest for you to feel the air moving. Because some places we don't believe that it's moving because we haven't been sensitized enough to feel it there. If you work with it, you can feel the air moving inside and out of your ears. You know, not because anybody's blowing on your ear, but just because that's an aperture. Just as when you open your mouth and you can feel the air moving into the mouth, you can actually feel the air moving in and out of the ears. Any place where there's an aperture, air will move in and out because of pressure. But see if you can move down the body and feel it. Now it's going to be hard for you to feel it in the bones because you've never breathed into your bones yet. But now you're going to try. And now you're going to see if you see what you see. It's not about imagining. It's about being present with it. It's not about hoping. If you go someplace and you can't feel the air moving, move someplace else. Feel it in your feet. Feel it in your hands. And ultimately you'll be able to feel it in your bones. Feel it in your heart. Okay. Could you feel it? In places that you've never felt it before? Feel it in your feet? In your body, in your shoulders, in your neck? Well, it's moving around all the time, and it's about developing that sensitivity. What came to my mind about your question, Deidre, when you talked about things like the eye, and the skin, they're not used to identify the self anyway. They're used to identify the body, right? But we already know, or we feel that we know that the body and the self are two separate things, object and subject. So what our process is to find the subject. See who's running this show. But we know that the sense gates, the eyes and the ears are not who we are. Why? Because they don't all function the same. You know that. Some people hear better than other people. Some people hear things that nobody else hears. Some people see better than other people. You would think, with all of this selfhood going around, that if the sense gates were a part of the self, that they would all be the same. But they're not. So our purpose for this exercise is to abandon not who we are, but who we're not, to separate ourselves from the misconceptions about does a self exist or not, and who is that self or that non-self that does exist. Because again, remember what he says that we should abandon who we're not. We should let go of the identity with who we're not. And it says, we are not the body. Abandon it. And then he says, and you will be happy for a long time. So that's inferring that there's a sentience that will be left there after we abandon the body, and after we abandon thought, and after we abandon feeling and perception and consciousness, that there is a sentience. Now we already know through the description of the cosmologies that there's realms of existence where everyone has the same mind but different bodies, and there's realms of existences where everyone has different minds but the same bodies, same mind, same body but different minds, and where there's a realm of existence where there's just consciousness that lives. There's no form, formless. Okay. So there's various possibilities, but it talks about in this realm of existence, there is no self. And by us having manifested a self, this is a big cause of all of our problems. Because just like the songs we sing and the prayers we say, if I truly saw all of you as me, then I would treat you differently. I'd treat you better. You know, if I believed that. But even though we sing those songs and say those prayers, a lot of people don't believe what they're saying. Because they'll go out and curse you or smack you or kill you or all of the other things that they do. And they certainly wouldn't do that to themselves. And if they believed that you were themselves, then they wouldn't do it to you either. Right? Okay. Any other questions? Got it? Yes, Jim.
Did the Buddha ever talk about where we started in the beginning?
There is no beginning in Buddhist cosmology. That opens up a big can of worms. No, he calls it beginningless time. That we've had expansions and contractions of the universe, but it's always been here. Now the question is, how is that possible? But having the facts, establishing a fact that it's always been here is a lot better than establishing a fact that there was a beginning. Because then that really puts you under pressure of explaining, well, what happened before that, and who made that? Who made God? You know, who made the beginning? Who did the first thing? If there was a beginning. There are certain things that you are capable of experiencing whereby you will be able to see the passing of birth and death, people dying and being born. You'll be able to see that. And it goes, you'll be able to see it not just for your past life or your past lives, but you'll be able to see it for many people and eons of time. And you just have to wait until you get there to see that one.
I'm sorry I asked the question.
No, don't be sorry. No, don't be sorry. Because I'm sure someone else was thinking about it too. No question issues forth in a vacuum. You know, practice. Smile at a stranger. May all beings be liberated from suffering. May we be well, happy, and peaceful.